The dwindling of manufacturing in India was part and parcel of the process of Indian economic decline. In the first half of the 18th century, India was a global manufacturing powerhouse. Indian textiles were worn around the world, they were worn around Asia, they were exported to Europe, they were worn by American slaves, and they were sent to Africa. Indian agriculture had high productivity, and Indian textile manufacture had relatively high productivity, of course both by the global standards of the time. The subsequent decline was striking. In 1750, it is estimated that India accounted for about a quarter of the world's manufacturing output. By 1800, this had gone down to one-fifth. By 1880, India was accounting for less than 3% of the world's manufacturing output. What were the causes of this decline? One major economic problem for India during this time was drought. Prior to 1775, it was relatively wet weather for India. The chance of a drought in a given year was less than 1 in 5. After 1775, the chance of a drought in a given year rose to 40%. Agriculture was such a major part of the Indian economy that if a drought came and the harvests were bad, very few other things went well in India. Another major economic problem for India was the collapse of Mughal rule, culminating in the early 18th century. Historians have debated just how much this mattered for Indian economic prosperity. The traditional view is that the collapse of Mughal rule led to quite a bit of disorder in India, it led to higher trade barriers, it led to foreign invasions, and in general India was less of a single coherent economic unit. There have been subsequent revisionist accounts which suggest the collapse of Mughal rule was not in every way a total disaster, but still a balanced perspective seems to suggest that the collapse of Mughal rule really did bring some serious economic problems for India. If one looks at data on grain wages, they start to decline in the late 17th century, and this decline continues throughout most of the 18th century. The problems became much worse in the early 19th century, with the Industrial Revolution of Britain, the rising productivity of the British textile industry, and, combined with that, the British takeover of India. All of a sudden, British textile mills were more productive and offered a cheaper product. To make matters worse, parts of the world, such as much of Latin America, the United States, Australia, Canada, and New England, all put stiff tariffs on foreign textiles, including textiles from India. British rule forced free trade on India, that is, the Indians had to accept British textiles with no tariffs. Now, in general, economists are strong believers in free trade and the benefits of international exchange, but this particular episode of free trade doesn't seem to have worked out all that well. For one thing, India did not have free trade to export its textiles, but perhaps more importantly, the Indian economy was seeing significant disruptions because of the cheaper British textiles, and there were too many barriers to trade, there was too much corruption, there was not enough infrastructure or resource mobility for free trade between India and Britain to lead to a reallocation of Indian labor to sectors where it would be more productive. So it wasn't really a free trade at all. It was free in one particular way, and it certainly wasn't a fair trade. What happened is that a lot of Indian textile workers lost their jobs and were unable to find lucrative employment somewhere else. The rate of deindustrialization starts to slow down by the 1860s, and by the late 19th century, early 20th century, India is very much reindustrializing. This is in part due to better technologies, better education for some workers, and in general, India is now competing as a low-wage supplier of textiles, whereas Great Britain, the United States, and other locations have much higher wages. Over time, in the 20th century, India built up a significant and diversified manufacturing base, especially after independence. A great deal has been written on the deindustrialization of India. You can simply Google India deindustrialization, and you'll find many sources. The single source that I have found most helpful, and I think most accurate, is the one listed here.